What is up, Buffalo Fanatics? Z-Bot here with you, live on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel on a Victory Monday night. And that, of course, can only mean one thing. It is the smoke break. So good to have you in. Fresh off the Bills' final ever regular season game at Ralph Wilson Stadium, the Buffalo Bills' final regular season game of the 2025 season, the last game before the Bills enter into the postseason, where they get set to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday afternoon this upcoming weekend. Oh, baby. I cannot wait. So good to see you all as you pile in on the first Victory Monday of 2026, and let's hope it's not the last. Let's hope we have another Victory Monday next week, and one after that, and one after that, because if we do, that means our Buffalo Bills are off to Santa Clara to take on the NFC champion and play in Super Bowl 60. Hard to believe the regular season has already come to a close, folks. What a wild and turbulent year it was. When you look back on it, the Buffalo Bills just destroyed the New York Jets in a meaningless final game of the year. And that would give them their 12th victory of the 2025 season. And it's kind of crazy to think that these Buffalo Bills won 12 games this year when you think back on how we view them. It feels like it was a worse year than a 12-win season, does it not? But they all count the same, and regardless of how the Bills were able to obtain their victories, they won 12 nonetheless. Only a game worse than that of last year at 13-4. And it feels like the Bills are a worse version this year of their team last year. Now, I know they lost in the final week last year, resting their starters. They won this year, resting their starters in the final game. But really, the difference between the final record, quite marginal. And I think it's because when you look back on the losses they had this year, they were bad losses. You know, if I'm looking at the Bills in 2024, the losses they had early in the year, they felt bad, right? The loss to Baltimore was bad. The worst loss of the year was to the Houston Texans on the road. Bills did not play well at all. Josh Allen had his worst game of his season. They'd only go on to lose one more game, and that was to the LA Rams in an absolute shootout where they put up 40-plus points and just still couldn't find a way to win. This is why this year, despite losing just one more game than that of 2024, it's why this season feels worse. It's the losses that they had. A brutal loss to the Miami Dolphins, who that week had just fired their general manager. They get more than doubled up. You know, going into that game, nobody had owned a divisional opponent more than the Buffalo Bills had owned the Miami Dolphins since Josh Allen had become the quarterback, and they got destroyed. They never got off the bus. The loss on primetime football to the Atlanta Falcons was disgusting. Josh Allen was on his back the majority of the game. They turned the ball over. They couldn't score. It was a brutal outing against a team that wound up not making the postseason. The loss to the Houston Texans was a bad loss when you consider they were playing their backup quarterback in Davis Mills. They spotted him a massive lead in the first half. Offense couldn't do anything. You look back at that game, though, and Houston really hasn't skipped a beat since. Hard to think that that was a bad loss in terms of the opponent in which they lost to. It was a bad loss in which the way that they played. If you look at the way that they played, it was a bad loss. But the Houston Texans might be the best team in the AFC. I mean, I could hear an argument for it. Certainly there's arguments for several teams right now, but there is a plausible argument that because of that defense alone, they're the team to beat in the AFC playoffs. And, you know, you look at the Patriots loss, they end up being the 2 seed. I think that was the most quality loss of the season. Bills didn't play great in that game, but I just thought it was the one game outside of the Miami game where it just felt like the Bills really never showed up. The Patriots loss in week 5 felt like a game where they were just completely outplayed in the end. Or I shouldn't say that, not completely outplayed. They were, the other team just made a couple more crucial plays. the Bills did enough, it felt like, to win that football game, but the Patriots really made sure they weren't going to lose. Drake May and Stephon Diggs in that one made a couple of great plays. It felt like the only loss you walked away from where you were like, it wasn't the best performance, but it wasn't the worst performance either, and they still should have won, could have won. You look at the other losses that they had, and I don't know if you feel the same. You felt awful after that Houston game. You felt awful after that Atlanta Falcons game. You felt brutal after the Miami Dolphins game. And then the Eagles game, you didn't feel good about the offense. I'll tell you that. You felt pretty damn good about that defense holding the Eagles to just 13 points and completely destroying them in the second half. There was nothing about that offense that you felt good about. And that's the thing here. I think we look back at 2025, and the losses that they had, for the most part, were just gross losses. Incapable of scoring more than 20 points in all of their losses. And that's the interesting thing. Every single time this season, the Buffalo Bills have scored north of 20 points, they have won the football game. All 12 of their victories, they were able to score north of 20 points and win the football game. All 5 of their losses, 20 points or less. I think you know the mark of demarcation going into the playoffs. The Buffalo Bills have to score more than 20 points if they want to win. Now, I think that could go without saying, even if you weren't even to consider how things went in the regular season. It's the postseason. Good luck winning in the NFL when you're scoring sub 20 points. At least good luck making a Super Bowl. Maybe you get out alive and have a lucky low-scoring victory. But I think we know that this team is not quite built to win games in a fashion in which maybe the Cleveland Browns beat the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 18, where they didn't score an offensive touchdown. They had 2 defensive touchdowns and still won the game. Off topic, an interesting note about that game. I saw a stat, I believe it was from Aaron Schatz. Based on all other games throughout the history of the league, calculated up, the way that game went between Cleveland and Cincinnati, the game where Myles Garrett broke the single-season sack record, if you were to factor in all other games played prior to that and how they unfolded, the Browns win that game 1.1% of the time. So I know it was a meaningless game, and the only reason you were even bothered to tune in was to see if Garrett broke the sack record, and he did. But that was as unique of a victory as you'll ever see in the NFL. I just thought that was interesting. But the Buffalo Bills season in 2025 was awfully interesting. On any given week, you thought Josh Allen was the MVP. And then on any other given week, you thought there might be something up with Josh Allen. What's going on with him? This is not what we saw from him in 2024. On any given week, you'd think this was the worst defense in the league. But then towards the later stages of the season, you're looking at it and you're saying, this defense has kind of turned a corner here. And in almost every game in the second half, the Bills defense stepped up and was able to correct what they did wrong in the first half. And in all their losses, really, other than the Miami Dolphins loss, which once again, it was their worst performance of the season. The entire team just didn't show up. But other than that Dolphins loss, all 4 of the other games, the Bills did not allow their opponent to score more than 24 points. Very uncharacteristic of a Buffalo Bills team to lose a game where a team scores 24 points or less, much less 4 of them. 24 points allowed to Atlanta, 23 points allowed to the New England Patriots, 23 points allowed to the Houston Texans, 13 points allowed to the Philadelphia Eagles. As bad as the defense played in portions of those games, like the Houston game in the first half, like the Atlanta game in the first half, you look at it in totality, and you're going to expect a team led by Josh Allen and the rushing title winner to win more often than not when they are only needing to score more than 24 or more. They lost 4 of those games this year. And now we head into the postseason, and because of those losses, and then because of some of the wins too, that have you wondering what this team is. Are they closer to the team that played Atlanta and Houston and Miami and Philadelphia? Or are they closer to the team that played Cincinnati and Carolina and Tampa Bay and Kansas City? We don't know. All we can hope for is that we get the best version of this team for a calendar month's worth of football. Because if we can get the best version of the Buffalo Bills, if we can get complimentary football, mistake-free football from these Buffalo Bills, they got as good of a chance as anybody. You've heard it all year long from me. You've heard it all year long from everybody, probably including yourself. It's never been more open on both sides of the coin. The NFC and the AFC are absolutely wide open and for the taking. It would not shock me if any of the teams in the remaining field other than the Carolina Panthers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It would not shock me if any other team made it to the Super Bowl. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. And that goes for the Buffalo Bills, who I do think if they find a way to play their best football in the month of January, they can be knocking on the door just like every other team thinks that they can be if they end up playing their best football. The stage is officially set, by the way, for Wildcard weekend. It's locked in. We're ready to go. If you haven't seen the schedule yet, it's a doozy, and it kicks off on Saturday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, where the LA Rams take on the Carolina Panthers. That's the only game of the 6 that you look at, and you're just like, really? Because one team had to win the NFC South, and it was the Panthers by a technicality, quite literally. The Panthers backed into the postseason off of a tiebreaker between the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints, or at least how that game went in Week 18. That's how they got in despite losing to Tampa Bay this past weekend. The LA Rams are a 10.5-point road favorite in a playoff game against the Carolina Panthers. All the other games are predicted to be within one score, and rightfully so. So I think that's why they scheduled that as the first one to kind of get it out of the way, because it's easily the worst. Saturday night, it's a bitter rivalry renewed. The oldest rivalry in the NFL and one of the best in sports. The Green Bay Packers on the road to take on Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the Chicago Bears. That caps off the Saturday section of the wild card round. Then we move into the Sunday slate, where the Buffalo Bills get things going at 1 p.m. Eastern on the road, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, their first time back to the postseason since 2022. They would win the wild card game that year in epic fashion, erasing a massive deficit against the LA Chargers to go on and win at the end. They would lose to the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round. It's the only time Trevor Lawrence has made the postseason. Didn't make it prior, haven't made it since up until now. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills coming off of an AFC Championship appearance where they lose by 3 points to Kansas City, looking to avenge that, and we'll be diving into that all week long. After the Bills-Jaguars game Sunday at 1, it's Niners-Eagles, 4:30 p.m. Eastern in Philadelphia. Looking forward to that one. What is Philadelphia? They do not feel like they are the team that went to the postseason last year and utterly dominated on their way to a prolific Super Bowl victory in which they made the Chiefs look like a shell of themselves for 60 minutes. I'm not overly confident in the Philadelphia Eagles' ability to be able to repeat or even get close to it. In fact, I think that the Eagles could be on upset watch here. San Francisco did not play well against Seattle, and that's because that Seattle defense is giving the Houston Texans a run for their money for the best defense in the NFL crown. Scored just a measly 3 points, couldn't get in the end zone. Eagles defense is good, but they're not Seattle defense good. And that Eagles offense is just not good at this current moment. It's just not. You saw what it was against Buffalo. Jalen Hurts didn't complete a pass in the second half. It's what makes that loss just so much more sickening. Didn't complete a pass. Would they have 17 total yards of offense in the second half? 49ers defense, however, is a sieve, so we'll see what ends up prevailing there, but I could see San Francisco winning that game. Sunday night football, and it's the LA Chargers on the road against the New England Patriots. Drake May's first ever postseason game. It's at home. It's under the lights. Justin Herbert does not have a playoff resume that he'd write home to mom about, but his head coach does. And it'll be interesting to see how that game goes. I think it's going to be closer than meets the eye. I know the Chargers are banged up, their offensive line in particular, and Herbert's been banged up towards the end of the year. It's an interesting game. I think if you had to make me bet on it, I would take the Patriots to win outright. But I do think that that is a matchup that might be going under the radar. I don't think that the New England Patriots are etched in stone to win this game. I think if you're going to be a 2 seed, the last thing you'd want to do is draw Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. I mean, I know they're not world beaters. They're not Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but typically when you're the 2 seed, drawing a 7 seed you're getting a lesser quality opponent than I think what the Chargers are. This isn't the most ideal draw for the New England Patriots. Last year, for instance, the Bills draw the Bo Nix-led Broncos. Good defense, but that was Bo Nix's first ever postseason game on the road. That's just a tough spot to be in, and it resulted in such. They scored on their first drive. They wouldn't score again. I'm interested in that one. The Chargers find a way to upset the Patriots, by the way. It's the only way that miraculously, against all odds, the Buffalo Bills could potentially play yet another home game at the Ralph before it's all said and done. With the Bills being the 6th seed, the only possible way they can play one more game inside of Ralph Wilson Stadium is if the Chargers go on a run. And that would be the AFC Championship, in which the 6th seed Buffalo Bills would host the 7th seed LA Chargers. Could you imagine that story, folks? Everyone, including myself, has already convinced themselves that we've seen the last game ever played in that stadium. And we probably have. But could you imagine that story? It's one you couldn't script. That would be something else. One last game at the Ralph, defying all odds, and it's a game in which you win and you go to the Super Bowl. Don't see it happening, but hey, you're saying there's a chance. I am. And then the Monday nighter to cap off Wildcard weekend, and it's the best defense in the NFL and the Houston Texans on the road taking on the AFC North champion. And folks, it's the team that I would not have predicted to be the AFC North champion. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Can you believe that game on Sunday Night Football in Week 18, where the Baltimore Ravens are officially eliminated from postseason contention off the missed field goal from rookie kicker Tyler Loop? That game was a snoozer until it wasn't. And it had a prolific finish that people will be talking about for some time. I did not think the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to win that football game going into it, but that's AFC North football for you. Many people wouldn't have predicted the Cleveland Browns to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers with their playoff lives on the line the week prior, and they did. And they go into this one at home, and they really didn't play well for the majority of the football game. Their defense did, but offensively they had nothing. And then all of a sudden, a game that felt like a stalemate defensive battle turned into a shootout at the end. And old man Rodgers wound up taking over a couple of dimes towards the end. An incredible couple of throws to get them the lead. They lost the lead. They get the lead back. A couple of massive defensive gaffes by the Pittsburgh Steelers that allowed Lamar Jackson to hit a wide open Zay Flowers, not once, but twice for 2 massive touchdowns. And at the end, Aaron Rodgers has a wide open receiver in Calvin Austin, I believe, to score the game winning touchdown. Chris Boswell comes out on the field, one of the best kickers in the NFL, for a routine extra point, something that he is automatic in, does not miss extra points. And he shanks the extra point off the upright. And you're thinking, oh my God, it's destiny for the Baltimore Ravens. Because on the following kickoff, Chris Boswell's night just got even worse. He kicks it out of bounds. And the Baltimore Ravens take over at the 40-yard line with a minute left and all 3 timeouts. Oh, wait, maybe did he kick it out of bounds, or was it return? No, I think it was a good return, actually, now that I think about it. It was a good return, regardless. I think it was a good return. The Ravens start off with incredible field position off the kickoff. And within an instant, they're in field goal range. So much so that they would even use their last play to position themselves in the middle of the field for Tyler Loop to come out. Well, it was a return. Yeah. At first, I thought it was an out-of-bounds kick, and then I remembered the kickoff. So, yeah, it was a great return by Baltimore to get them set up. And they were set up. 44-yard field goal for the rookie kicker. Man, what a great spot to be in. What a really tough spot to be in. A rookie on the line who takes over for one of the greatest kickers in NFL history in Justin Tuck. Or, no, I'm sorry. Not Justin Tuck. Justin Tucker. Thinking of the former New York Giant. So Tyler Loop takes over for one of the best kickers in NFL history, Justin Tucker. And he's given an unbelievable moment here that can go one of two ways. You kick this one through the uprights, and you're a legend in Baltimore. You miss it, and the weight of the seasoned failures falls on your shoulders. And the dreaded words that Buffalo Bills fans are all too familiar with wound up being uttered by Mike Tirico when Tyler Loop kicks the ball and it goes wide right. 26 Pittsburgh, 24 Baltimore. Pittsburgh wins the division. Pittsburgh solidifies the 4 seed. Aaron Rodgers lives to see one more game, and they will take on the Houston Texans on Monday Night Football. Now, I look at that game, and I have a tough time thinking that the Houston Texans lose. I think it's the best defense in football. But I saw a stat that I found to be real interesting, and obviously, does it really matter? No, but, context nonetheless. This game's on Monday Night Football, and it's in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin has a 22-4 record all time on Monday Night Football. That is insane. The Steelers are also a home underdog, 3-point dog. Mike Tomlin is also an incredible coach when he is a home dog. Let me look it up. As a home underdog against the spread, Mike Tomlin is 21-7-3. So in 31 games as an underdog at home, Mike Tomlin is either covered or pushed on the spread in 24 of the 31 games. He's also won 19 of 12 straight up. That's pretty impressive. I have a tough time seeing how the Steelers score against the Texans defense. Josh Allen could barely complete a pass against that Texans defense. I just don't see how Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old who can't move is going to be able to find a way to put up more than 14 points in that game. That feels like a game in which the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is going to have to will them to victory. And they could. The Houston Texans offense is nothing special. I think they've been playing a bit better as of late, but it's outside. They're used to playing in a dome. It's going to be in Pittsburgh. It's probably going to be, 25-ish degrees? Interesting. And how incredible would it be to have the Texans defense bounced in round 1 should the Bills be able to find a way to advance? Stage is set, and this is the best time of the year, folks. It does not get better. Thursday night, college football playoff semifinal game 1. Friday night, college football semifinal game 2. Saturday, 2 wildcard games. Sunday, 3 wildcard games. Monday night, the 6th and final wildcard playoff game. This is the best weekend. This is the best week of football of the year. And all we can hope is that our Buffalo Bills deliver on the best football weekend of the year. The Bills open up as a slight favorite, as we talked about on the post-game show on Sunday afternoon against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Bills open up as a 1.5-point favorite. Interesting. Would I be slighted by that if I'm Liam Cohen and the Jags? Would I be offended by that if I'm Liam Cohen and the Jags? Yes. The Jaguars should be favored in this game. The Bills are favored for one reason and one reason only, and you know the answer. It's 2 words. Both the words could be a first name. Josh Allen. You plug in any other quarterback in that situation other than Patrick Mahomes, and the Bills are a road dog in this game. But because of Josh Allen, the Bills are viewed as a slight favorite in a game in which they have no business being a favorite in. They're the worst seed. It's on the road. They had a worse season than Jacksonville. And frankly, they're not as good of a team collectively as Jacksonville. If you ever wanted the perfect example as to how much Josh Allen means to the football team and how much he swings the perception of how games go, look no further than the line in the Bills-Jaguars wildcard game. Because Josh Allen is the sole reason as to why they are favored on the road against a team that they're not as good as, against a team that they are the 3 seed to their 6 seed. And here it starts, right? Buff JD. I'm saying the Bills have no business being favored in this football game. You don't know football. Well, I appreciate you stopping in, Buff. Glad to have you in. Glad you're watching. If I don't know football, I don't know why you'd watch me. That really doesn't make much sense. If I don't know anything, I don't know why you'd spend your time watching me. That doesn't really seem productive on your end. But wouldn't you think the team that's on an 8-game win streak, that's won 9 of their last 10 games, that's playing at home, that's had the better season, that has the better wide receiver room, that has an 1,100-yard rusher, that has the number 1 run defense in the NFL going up against the team in which relies on running the football to win football games, wouldn't you think that team would rightfully deserve to be favored at home in the postseason? It's no slight at the Bills. It's just reality. It's just a fact. It's pretty remarkable that the Buffalo Bills are favored to win this football game. And there's only one reason as to why they are favored to win it, and it's because of Josh Allen. You know, Buff's saying, who have they beat? Look at the numbers. I understand that. We've been saying this about everybody all year long. Who have the Patriots beat? Who have the Jaguars beat? Who have the Texans beat? Who have the Bills beat? I mean, the AFC had as much parity this year as it ever has. So you can really make this argument about any team. And I keep seeing it about the New England Patriots. They've had the worst strength of schedule, like literally ever. One of the worst of all time. But look, at all this stuff doesn't matter anymore. We're in the postseason now. That season's done, and this is a new season. This is why wouldn't shock me in the slightest if the Buffalo Bills go in there and win that football game. But it also wouldn't shock me if they went in there and lost the game. And you're saying to me, well, who have they played? Well, they played the Denver Broncos, who are the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they absolutely destroyed them. They beat the Denver Broncos in a way nobody really has all year long. They destroyed them. The Bills don't have a quality win like that all year long. Buffalo Bills got some great wins, but they didn't manhandle a top-tier team all year long. And no, the Carolina Panthers don't count. The perception is that the Buffalo Bills are the better team because of Josh Allen, and this is why you continue to hear this narrative. I feel like you are continuing to hear the narrative that it's Josh Allen's time. There is no excuses. And if you looked at it on paper, you'd probably come away with the same conclusion. There's no Patrick Mahomes, there's no Lamar Jackson, there's no Joe Burrow. But these teams are better than being advertised. I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are the most complete team in the AFC going into the postseason. They have a top defense, and they have a really solid offense with an 1,100-yard rusher, 3 really good wide receivers. Trevor Lawrence is playing the best football of his career. It's a good football team. It's a well-rounded football team. And I do think there's an argument that it is the best football team in the AFC right now. The Texans have the best defense in the NFL, but that might not be the best team in the AFC or the NFL. I don't think anybody's overwhelmingly threatened by the Houston Texans offense. Denver Broncos is the exact same argument. Pittsburgh, nobody's threatened by them at all. And then New England. It's a good football team, but as we've talked about, who have they played? Well, we're about to find out. And same with the Chargers. Very up and down, topsy-turvy year with a lot of injuries thrown in the mix. And now here's where we'll come to the crossroads and meet on the same path here, Buff. Saying Bills play down to the competition in regular season. In the playoffs, we go off. Looks like the defense is ready this time, too. Nobody wants to play the Bills, and that's where I agree with you. Mike D. Buffalo saying, Bot, stop talking yourself into a loss. Listen, I'm talking myself into reality. This is the time of year where I'm facing 2 different circumstances. There's a circumstance in which you are the traditional quintessential fan. No way the Bills lose this game. No way. In the back of my mind, of course, I have that. Of course I have that. But then there's also the rational fan that lives in reality. And unquestionably, to me, this is a damn good football team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't understand this idea from people that this is going to be a fun run for Buffalo. Whether they win or lose, this game is coming down to late in the fourth quarter. And if it doesn't, I will be stunned beyond comprehension. Either way, I don't see the Bills getting rolled by anyone. They are not going to go out like that. But I don't see them rolling anyone here either. This game's coming down to late in the fourth quarter. Mike saying, you're nervous. We get it. I'm nervous as hell. I'm nervous as hell. Beyond nervous. It's why I coined this week as the best, worst week of the year. It's the best week because you've earned the right to play in single elimination football for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. It's the best time of the year. There is nothing better as a sports fan than single elimination do or die games in which if you lose, you go home. If you win, you advance towards the title. This is what sports is all about. It's what you live for as a fan. You watch every single snap of every single game for months, from September all the way to January, to earn the right to watch these games. And it either all ends in a blissful reality in which you never even experienced before, or it ends in absolute heartbreak in which you've experienced time and time again. It's the best time of the year. It's the worst time of the year for both of those two reasons. Unfortunately for us, it's resulted in the worst time of the year time and time again. But the reason why it's the best time of the year is because we hope each and every time we get back to this time of the year that it results in the best possible outcome. And maybe it could. And is there the best chance the Bills have had for it to become that outcome? Perhaps. Perhaps it is. Because I do believe it is anyone's title for the taking. The Bills have lost one playoff game outside of Josh Allen's. You got to count it. I can't, I've been doing this. I got to stop doing this. Where I just don't count Josh Allen's first playoff game. You got to count it. They should have won that damn game in overtime. I still get pissed about that game. The Bills weren't going to win the Super Bowl that year, but I still get pissed about that Texans loss. The Bills have only lost 2 playoff games outside of the Kansas City Chiefs losses. One was in overtime, and one was the worst playoff game they've ever played. Ever. I mean, they legitimately didn't show up, and I don't want to give them excuses, and I won't. But there's something to be said. You know, it was the DeMar Hamlin year, the Stephon Diggs drama. There was weather issues in Buffalo all year long. There was an issue where they had to uproot their game at home and play it in Detroit. They're not excuses, but they are reasons that I think factored in to them just flaming out at the end, because they've never played that bad in the postseason since. So there's got to be a reason behind it. And maybe all of those different factors were reasons behind it. And also, Cincinnati was a pretty damn good football team in their own right. The Chiefs are done. They're gone. And where the Bills have struggled mightily in the postseason, obviously, is against the Chiefs. But the one place that they've struggled the most is defensively, where they allow the Chiefs to score 30-plus points nearly every single time they've played them in the postseason. In fact, I think it has been every time they've played them in the postseason. Against all other opponents, the Bills' defense has shown up. Denver last year, right? The New England Patriots in the perfect game. This is also the highest quality opponent the Bills have faced in the wildcard round since 2019, Josh Allen's first playoff game against Houston. Unquestionably, in my opinion. This is the best team they'll play in the wildcard up until this point. And it's because the Bills have the lowest seed here. I mean, they've earned the right to have a home playoff game in the wildcard every single year outside of Josh Allen's first playoff game in 2019. A place in which they cannot win. In an NRG Stadium. They still cannot win there. Still haven't won there. I like to savor in this time of year and soak it in. You don't know how many more cracks you're going to get. You don't know how many more swings you're going to get. You don't know how many more chances to go up to the plate and let it fly that you're going to get. And as you know, with me, it'll never be lost on me having the opportunity to swing the bat one more time, because I sat in the dugout for 20 years growing up. And the Bills are now going on to their 7th consecutive plate appearance. You're waiting for that home run. And I do think that if the Bills beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, we could see that home run. I think that this is the ultimate barrier. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you, if the Bills beat the Jags. I got to decide by the end of the week how I'm fully feeling about it. As of right now, I don't particularly feel great. But I'll put a caveat on it for those who are going to say that I'm rooting on this team's downfall or I'm not confident in them. If the Bills beat the Jags, I won't predict them to lose again. And I'm still not entirely sure I predict them to lose this weekend. I got to think about it. I got to spend some time here. It's a big game. I won't predict them to lose again. I think this is in the ultimate litmus test. I say what you want. It's just Jacksonville, whatever. You got to put some respect on the Jags here. Historically, they're a forgotten franchise, and they have not been good since drafting Trevor Lawrence. They've been very mediocre. Liam Cohen has turned this team around. They are humming. They are humming. 9 of the last 10 in the W column, 8 straight. I don't care who it's against. The Bills lost to the Falcons. The Bills lost to the Dolphins. You still got to play the game and win. And they've done that 8 straight weeks going into the postseason. And there's factors involved with this team that have to have you come to the reality that they are a damn good team. They have the number 1 run defense in the NFL. Did you know they haven't allowed a single rusher this entire season to crack 75 yards in a game? Franchise record, 85 yards allowed per game on the ground. By far the best in the NFL. They have 3 really respectable wide receivers. They don't have a single receiver that's a JSN or a Puka or a Chase. But have you seen what Parker Washington's been doing for that team recently? Probably the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL. Brian Thomas Jr. And oh, by the way, Jacoby Myers, who the Bills could have had, but didn't. Only played 9 games for them. Just south of 500 yards already and multiple touchdowns. Sure as hell better than what the Bills are trotting out there at the wide receiver position, I'll tell you that. And then Travis Etienne has had maybe the quietest 1,100-yard year you'll ever see. He only ran for more than 100 yards, I believe, twice all season. But he's consistently putting up decent numbers. He doesn't go off like a Derrick Henry or a Bijan Robinson. It's not his type of game. And as I'm confirming here, yes, he's only had 2 games where he's gone for north of 100 yards. Back in week 1 and week 4. That's it. But consistently, he gives you those 70 to 80-yard games. And that's resulted in 1,100 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns. And then if we're looking at Trevor Lawrence, this is the best year of his career. Drafted back in 2021, this is Trevor Lawrence's 5th year in the NFL. And he has just south of his best passer rating of his career, the most touchdowns thrown of his career, and north of 4,000 yards on the year. He is susceptible to turning the ball over. However, he has eradicated that from his game. Ever since the Cardinals game back on November 23rd, in which he threw 3 interceptions, Trevor Lawrence over the next 6 games has only thrown 1 interception. That's it. The last 6 games, 1 interception, and it was against the Colts in a victory. He's playing the best football of his career. And oh, by the way, over that time span, 15 touchdowns. Just wanted to make sure I had that right. The last 6, let me just double check that. Yeah. 15-1 touchdown ratio in the last 6 weeks. Chevy's saying, what teams did he play, though? I get it. And I'm not arguing that they played this gauntlet of a schedule, because they certainly didn't. The Titans, the Colts, the Jets, the Colts again, the Titans. I get it. But that Broncos game's lying within there, and that can't be overlooked. He had 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 115 passer rating in that game where they blew out Denver, the 1 seed. If that Denver game wasn't in the mix of those 6 games, I would probably sit here and say, this could be fraudulent. But when you're humming, you're humming. And they didn't skip a beat against the number 1 seed in the NFL. There's a plausible argument, though, to who they've played. They have played a very weak back end of the year here. Once again, you got to play the games. And even if you're playing weak teams, it doesn't ultimately result in prolific play. A 15-1 touchdown ratio over 6 weeks is prolific. But he's not Josh Allen. Trevor Lawrence is not Josh Allen. Nobody is. Trevor Lawrence has 1 playoff appearance in his career. It's back in 2022, 2 games, 1 win, 1 loss. The 1 win in which he had was an absolute collapse by the LA Chargers that resulted in a Jags win. The following year, Brandon Staley and the GM would be fired. That's the same year, if you remember, where the Chargers wound up losing to the Raiders. What was it, like 63-7? The year following that loss to Jacksonville, the Chargers were one of the worst teams in the NFL. And as a result, they fired their head coach, their GM. That's when Jim Harbaugh was hired. It's the only win. Trevor Lawrence has played 2 playoff games in his career. 2. 5 touchdowns. 5 interceptions. What version of Trevor Lawrence is going to show up on Sunday afternoon? Is he going to play like he has the last 6 weeks? Because if he does, that's going to be a tough team to beat. But is he going to play like he did the last time he was in the postseason? Is he going to play like he did earlier in the year where, let's just rattle this off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his first 7 games in 2025, he threw at least 1 interception. Or excuse me. 1, 2, 3. 4 of his first 5 games, I beg your pardon. 4 of his first 5 games, he threw an interception. And they started off the year slow. Jacksonville started off the year slow. And this is why I think they're not being talked about like one of the better teams in the NFL. There's some reverse psychology involved in this. This is like what's happening with the Houston Texans a bit. If you just were to reverse the year, because the Jags started the year off far worse than they began the year. They started off the season with losses to Seattle, losses to Cincinnati, right? Blown out by the Rams. But they finished the year 9-1. And I think if they were to have started the year 9-1, you would think about them a lot differently. Because you don't look at that the way the records end up falling out. Still had 13 wins. But they started the year slower than they ended it, of course. They're 9-1 in their last 10. And if they were to have started the year 9-1, I think you look at them differently. Same with Houston, who's on fire recently too. Now, the Bills do pose one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. We aren't 100% sure how accurate that is because the Bills have the worst run defense in the NFL. But they have been better as of late. They really have. If the Bills defense can show up in the postseason the way that they have in games not played against the Kansas City Chiefs, I like our chances. And if Josh Allen shows up and plays the way he's played in virtually every game, I like our chances. But, man, you'd have to convince me majorly. You'd have to bring me a boatload of evidence to make me believe this game isn't going to be a tight one, isn't going to be a close one all the way to the end. So I mentioned their offense. Here's what you're going up against in terms of the Jacksonville offense. I mentioned Travis Etienne, real solid year. 1,107 yards on 260 rushes for 7 touchdowns. 36 receptions out of the backfield as well. Trevor Lawrence had a 4,000-yard year this year, most touchdowns thrown in his entire career. He did, however, throw 12 interceptions. But as I mentioned, only one pick in his last 6 games. The wide receiver room is interesting because it's not a wide receiver room that's led by this popular, famous stud wide receiver. It's just a good wide receiver core through and through. There's not one dominant guy, but there are a handful of guys that all play their role well. Parker Washington leading the way. Once again, I think Parker Washington is the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL right now. 847 yards to finish the year, 5 touchdowns. 58 receptions. Brian Thomas Jr. right behind with 707 yards receiving on 48 catches, 2 touchdowns. Brenton Strange, their tight end, pretty solid year, 540 yards on 46 catches, 3 touchdowns. And then Jacoby Myers, who's been extraordinary since they acquired him. In just 9 games, he had 42 catches for 483 yards and 3 touchdowns. So there's not one guy that you look at and you're terrified of, but they have 3 really quality guys with a pretty solid tight end. So that's what they're working with on the offensive side of the ball. But it's the defensive side of the ball that I'm very interested in when it comes to this matchup. The Jacksonville Jaguars have one of the most underrated defenses in the NFL, and that's because their run defense is as good as it gets in the league. 85 yards per game allowed on the ground. As I mentioned earlier in the show, that is a franchise record, and it was the number 1 run defense in the league. 6 yards best and the next best in Denver, who we know. This is the company, by the way, that Jacksonville's in terms of their run D. They're number 1. The next 3 are all of the 3 defenses we consider to be the best in the NFL. The Denver Broncos, the number 2 overall run D. The Seattle Seahawks, the number 3 overall run D. The Houston Texans, the number 4 overall run D. That's the company in which Jacksonville's in right now when it comes to their run defense. As we know, the Buffalo Bills offense is predicated on running the football. It's why James Cook won the rushing title, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The Bills, when they get James Cook going, that usually means that their offense is going. That usually means they're going to win the football game. In the games in which he has not been able to get going, it's been rough for Buffalo. 74 yards against the Eagles, loss. 53 yards against the Dolphins, loss. 87 yards against the Falcons, loss. 49 yards against the Patriots, loss. There were a couple of games where he had decent outings and they still won, or like mediocre outings compared to what he did all year, and still won. But in those games, Josh Allen was off the charts. I look at the Bengals game, for instance. They held him to under 100 yards on 18 carries, but Josh Allen had his highest passer rating of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals with 3 touchdowns through the air. So if you take away the run game, you're going to have Josh Allen put together one of his best games of the season in order for the Bills to win. You look at the Eagles game where they held him to just 3.7 yards per carry on 20 carries for sub 75 yards. Josh Allen didn't play well in that game. And what did that result in? 12 total points scored and a loss. You look at the Patriots game, 3.3 yards per carry, less than 50 yards on the ground. Josh Allen didn't have his best outing. Very costly interception thrown by Josh Allen in the red zone in that game. Bills lose by 3. He only had 44 yards in week 1 against the Ravens. But once again, Josh Allen put together one of the greatest comebacks we've ever seen. What did he have? Over 200 yards in the fourth quarter alone. So there's kind of 2 takeaways you can make from this. If James Cook has over 100 yards, the Bills are in really, really good shape. If James Cook has sub 100 yards, you're going to need Josh Allen to play one of the best games of his season in order for the Bills to have their best chance at winning. It's pretty straightforward. The only game in which the Bills offense really hummed and James Cook just had a pretty bad outing was the Tampa Bay Bucs game. And the Bucs, believe it or not, have a top 5 run defense themselves. But the Buccaneers' pass defense is horrid, and the Buffalo Bills took advantage of that, scoring 44 points. James Cook in that Bucs game only had 3 yards per carry, 48 total yards. But the Buccaneers' pass defense was just so porous that the Bills were able to take advantage of that and put up points. Is that what the Bills are going to have to do against Jacksonville? And here's where there could be some potential to exploit Jacksonville. The Jags have one of the worst defenses in the league when it comes to defending the tight ends. And if there's one thing outside of Josh Allen and James Cook that I think the Bills have to rely on the most in order to advance in the postseason, it is Dalton Kincaid. And all you can hope for is that Dalton Kincaid remains healthy throughout the postseason, because if he does, I think the Bills are in a far better situation than they would be if he gets banged up again. The pass offense for the Bills is dramatically different with him on the field as opposed to with him off the field. And I think that the pass offense has to go through Dalton Kincaid in order for them to be the most successful they can possibly be. Luckily for the Bills, the Jacksonville Jaguars struggle in that department. In terms of defending tight ends, they're bottom third in the league. And just to give you a comparison there, in regard to what that might look like in other games the Bills have played this year, a team similar to that output, the Cincinnati Bengals. And if you remember, Dawson Knox went nuts in that game. That was a game where the Bills really did a great job at exploiting the inefficiencies of the Bengals defense defending tight ends. Dalton Kincaid also had 4 for 41 and a touchdown in that game too. I believe in the Bengals game, Jackson Hawes had a touchdown, Dawson Knox had a touchdown, and Dalton Kincaid had a touchdown. Now, the Bengals are the worst in the league against the tight end, so it might not be that bad, but it is one of the weaker elements of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Let me get the numbers up. Because I think this is going to be a big emphasis for Joe Brady, Josh Allen in this offense. So if we're looking at receptions per game, the Jags were towards the bottom of the league in receptions allowed to tight ends, over 6 receptions allowed to tight ends per game. In terms of yards allowed to tight ends per game, the Jaguars were in the bottom 10 in that regard as well. They were also bottom 10 in the league in terms of touchdowns allowed per game to tight ends. I do think that's going to be a major emphasis for this team. And I was glad to see Dalton Kincaid go out and get some reps against the Jets early in that game in Week 18. You saw Mitch Trubisky go to him a few times early. He's going to be so crucial. He's going to be so crucial for the Buffalo Bills offense, as is Dawson Knox. Give Dawson Knox his flowers. He has had a great back half to the season here. After the drafting of Dalton Kincaid, I think Dawson Knox has gotten forgotten a little bit. But in the back half of the season here, he's really stepped up. Just had a touchdown against the Jets, a $200,000 touchdown at that. He hit his yards incentive and his touchdown incentive for the season. He was huge against the Patriots. He had 2 touchdowns in that unbelievable comeback. The Bills are very heavily focused on using their tight ends. It's why I think the pass offense has been noticeably weaker without Kincaid on the field. But I thought Hawes had a great rookie year. Knox had a really solid season in the back half of his career here. This is the most receiving yards that Dawson Knox has had since 2022. It's the most receptions he's had since 2022. It's the most touchdowns he's had since 2022. Dawson Knox just gave you his best season in the last 3 years. And then Dalton Kincaid, when healthy, you saw the strides this year. When he was out on the field and healthy, you saw the strides. You saw the impact he had. Early in the year, when he was fully healthy, he had a touchdown in 3 of the Bills' first 4 games. And he had at least 4 receptions in 3 straight games to start the year. Now, we know he's been banged up throughout the season. But you got to think this is the healthiest you're going to have him. He got some burn against the Jets, and he's going to be ready to go. He's had time to heal up, barely played against the Jets. This is going to be the fullest version of Dalton Kincaid we've had in a bit. And they're going to need him. They're going to need him. They're going to need Knox. And I'm wondering what the approach is for Joe Brady here. Knowing what the run defense is for the Jags, what's the approach? Are you going to try to still ground and pound your way to victory here? The Bills have shown that they are able to run against teams that do possess a solid run defense. No example better than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ran all over them. The Carolina Panthers ran all over them. And James Cook did have success against the Houston Texans defense, which is one of the best run defenses in the NFL. They just couldn't pass the ball in that game. My concern is if they go out and they are unable to establish the run, that's where the Bills are in trouble. They're going to have to run the ball to some capacity. Now, I'm not saying James Cook has to have 25 carries for $125 in order to win. Certainly would help. But if they're not able to have that type of game from Cook, then Josh Allen is going to have to not turn the ball over, not take unnecessary sacks, and play one of the better games of his season. Now, in terms of the pass defense for Jacksonville, we talked about how the tight ends can be the tight ends can be used to the Bills' advantage there. When it comes to their overall pass defense, it's nothing special. It's pretty much dead middle of the pack, closer to bottom third. So you got to think that this is going to be maybe a more Josh Allen-oriented game than a James Cook-oriented game. And if we get the playoff version of Josh Allen that we've come to know and love, that could be what it takes. Could get the job done. Once again, the old cliche, don't turn the ball over. That's going to be so key. And luckily for us, Josh Allen, despite turning it over far more this year than he did last year, Josh Allen does not turn the ball over in the postseason. We're looking at Josh Allen's numbers in the postseason. They're prolific, as you know. But the one thing that I think stands out the most is the fact that he just doesn't turn the ball over. Finding the exact stats here. So in 13, I believe, let's see. $25 to 4 touchdown to interception ratio in the postseason. 4 interceptions. That's it. 4 interceptions. It's unbelievable. In 13 playoff games, 4 interceptions for Josh Allen. So not quite a full season's worth of football, but closer to it than not. 4 picks to 25 touchdowns. And he hasn't thrown a pick in 3 consecutive playoff games. To take it a step further, in his last 6 postseason games, 1 interception for Josh Allen. Actually, no, I got that reversed. I apologize. It's even better. He hasn't thrown an interception in his last 5 playoff games. I beg your pardon. I had it reversed. Allen has not thrown an interception in his last 5 playoff games. The last interception he threw in the postseason was against the Bengals in a game in which nobody played well. The whole team didn't show up. That was the last time Josh Allen threw a pick in the postseason. 5 straight postseason games with no picks. And in that time, 8 touchdowns through the air, not including anything he did on the ground. It's unbelievable. In fact, let's factor in the ground as well. Last 5 playoff games, including the rushing stats, 13 total touchdowns for Josh Allen, 1 interception. That's the Josh Allen we're going to need to show up on Sunday and throughout January. get to some super chats. Let's check out and see what you guys are saying here as we get ready for the postseason this week. We'll kick things off with Signified, who has been a member for 21 months. Appreciate you as always, Signified. He's saying, the Panthers have made the Super Bowl every year a new pope is elected and J-Lo gets divorced. Both happened this year. Yeah, I saw that stat. There was another thing, too. It's like if they wear a patch, there's like if they wear a patch to celebrate like a year or whatever. I think this year is the 30th year or something they're celebrating. They also make at least the NFC Championship. Look, the Rams already lost to the Panthers once this year, and I think they got in the red zone once that entire game. They had a couple of bombs that went their way, and they won in the end. I just, for the life of me, cannot see them beating LA twice. That would be nuts. But if history repeats itself, new pope, J-Lo gets divorced, that equals the Panthers playing in the Super Bowl, so maybe that's who the Bills will end up facing if things continue down that track. The Kinger, Jeff King, saying, Bot, your points are all factual and correct. However, my friend, I'm the biggest pessimist you will ever meet, but we got this, my man. Jeff King feeling confident despite his pessimism. He's all in. He's got the Bills beating the Jags, and I love it. And I love to hear that from a fellow pessimist. That's good to hear. He's feeling confident. Once again, my confidence level is so varied. It's like I do think that they could beat any team. I think they could lose to any team. And once again, I think outside of the Steelers and the Panthers, I feel like every team in the entire postseason, all 12 other teams could say the same thing. But I'm loving the confidence level, Kinger. Loving it, baby. Signified back in. It's really crazy to think New England would be the 1 seed if they didn't lose to the Raiders. How about that? So many shoulda, coulda, woulda moments throughout the year here. If the Falcons didn't lose to the Jets earlier in the year, they would have won the NFC South. They would have been playing the Rams instead of the Panthers. If the Bills would have beaten the Patriots back in week 5 and didn't lose by 3, they would have been the 2 seed. If Tyler Loop makes that field goal last night, they would have been the 4 seed. I mean, there's just so many of these moments, but this one's crazy because the Patriots did lose to the Raiders to begin the year, and the Raiders wound up finishing as the worst team in football and have solidified the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 draft. Buff saying, I love you, Bot, but I disagree about us not being the best team. As you remember, me and Buff were going at it a little bit earlier. He's saying we just have not played 4 quarters of full football. If we play 3 quarters, nobody can compete. Only the Bills can beat the Bills. Congrats on being a dad. Thank you, Buff. I appreciate it. And want to reemphasize little friendly banter earlier. I wasn't coming at you when I said, I asked you why you tuning into me if I don't know anything. That question it's still a fair question, I guess. But I appreciate the super chat, and I agree with you here. But here's the key. There's a word in there that I think needs to be in all caps, and it's the word if. If. Yeah, well, if Josh Allen completes a wide-open 2-point conversion to Khalil Shakir, the Bills are playing the Steelers this week, and you wouldn't hear me utter any word beyond full confidence. You wouldn't hear me say a single thing other than being fully confident in the Bills' ability to win that game. If the Bills beat the New England Patriots in week 5, like I said, and they put together a full game, then they'd be the 2 seed. If they were to have beaten the Miami Dolphins, who they were a touchdown favorite against, they'd have a higher seed. They'd have a home playoff game. My problem with if is it factors in conclusions that are not based in reality. They're not grounded in reality. There's a lot of ifs. Every team's got ifs. Every fan base has ifs. Our lives are surrounded by ifs. If I did this, then this would have resulted in this. If I didn't do this, it would have resulted in this. If. The thing of it is, Buff, is that a lot of these ifs that you're discussing here, in particular, not playing 4 quarters of football, the Bills have not done that routinely all year long. Look at all the games in which the Bills did not put together 4 complete quarters of football. The list is far longer than the games in which they did put together 4 quarters of complete football. It took a full half off against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It took a full half off against the New England Patriots. They got destroyed by the Ravens throughout the majority of that football game back in week 1. They didn't show up against the Browns despite winning. They didn't put together a full 4 quarters of football against the Texans, against the Falcons. I mean, the list goes on and on. Where I agree with you is if the Bills put together 4 quarters of complete football over the duration of the next month, they will win the Super Bowl, or at least go to the Super Bowl. There's no disagreement there. What you're saying here is key. The only team that can beat the Bills is the Bills. The problem is how many times this year has the Bills beaten the Bills? Multiple times. They just beat themselves against Philadelphia a week ago. But you also have to factor in what other teams have done to them. When the Bills have gone up against stout defenses, they have struggled. Stout defense in Philadelphia, struggled. Stout defense in Cleveland, struggled. Stout defense in Houston, struggled. Stout defense in Atlanta, struggled. This is the number 1 run defense in the NFL that they're about to face. If history repeats itself, it would lead you to believe they're going to have their struggles. This is where I'm at. Now, however, if they're able to overcome those struggles and put together 4 quarters of football, they're the best team in the AFC. They have the best quarterback in the AFC. They have the best running back in the AFC. They have the best pass defense in the AFC. If they put together 4 quarters of football, they are the team to beat in the AFC, unquestionably. My problem here, though, Buff, is that they have not given you a reason to believe they can string together a month's worth of complete football. And granted, you don't have to do that to win. I understand that. You're not going to play the most unbelievable best football you've ever played for 12 consecutive quarters to get to the Super Bowl. There's going to be some trials, tribulations. There's going to be some turbulence. But it's got to be far better than not. It's got to be like a 10-2 ratio there. 10 dominant or great quarters, 2 not, if you want to make the Super Bowl. Or you're going to have to have a ton of luck on your side, and we know we don't have that in Buffalo. But I'm with you. If this team puts together their best football in this month of January, they're going to the Super Bowl. But if they put together games like they've been susceptible to putting together throughout the duration of the season, they're in trouble. What's going to show up? Appreciate the super chat, Buff. Richie coming in. Richie saying, they got the best run D until they play us. After getting sweet baby Ray some touches, regardless of the Jets, anti-Johnson, Cook, bring it on. Super Bowl 60, baby. You know, it's a decent point. James Cook's the best running back in the NFL, at least statistically. And they have played Jonathan Taylor a couple of times in that window, but they haven't played anybody like James Cook. And they haven't played the best run offense in the NFL, and that's what the Buffalo Bills are. So you're right. Something's got to give there, though. You got the best run offense in the NFL. You got the best run defense in the NFL. Something's got to give. If the Bills can win that battle, I like their chances. Something's got to give. So it's a good point you're bringing up here, Richie. Somebody's got to win that battle. Because you got to think, Jaguars fans are sitting here saying, yeah, we got the best run defense in the NFL, but they got the best run offense in the NFL. It's like how we're sitting here saying, we got the best run offense in the NFL, but they got the best run defense in the NFL. Something's got to give. Kinger back in saying, brother, I'm shocked by this and I'm a realist, but you're talking like they have no chance. I guarantee you they will win this game. Guaranteed, says Jeff King. Smile and relax. Josh has got this. Enjoy, my friend. Jeff, I hope you're right. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm not giving this team a chance. In fact, I want it to be the opposite of that. I'm trying to give you the understanding of what we're going up against here. I'm trying to lay the foundation as to what this game on Sunday is going to be. I keep seeing people overlooking Jacksonville, and I keep seeing people talking about them as if they are vastly inferior to Buffalo, and this is why I'm talking about them the way that they are. I have a lot of respect for this team. They've earned the respect. I don't know how you couldn't be respectful of this team when they've won 9 of their last 10, and Trevor Lawrence is playing his best football. Liam Cohen is a Coach of the Year candidate. They have a 1,000-yard rusher. They have 3 really respectable wide receivers, the best run defense in the NFL. The game's at home. They've won 8 straight. This is a good football team. Saying all those things does not result in me thinking the Bills have no chance. I don't think those two things are correlated. The Bills certainly have a chance. To me, those two things are on two opposite ends of the spectrum. Me talking about who the Jags are, not what I think they are, but what they have proven to be, has nothing to do with whether or not the Bills have no chance. I'm talking about all the reasons in which I think this is going to be a difficult game for Buffalo and why I think it was a tough draw for the Bills. I would have rather have played New England, and I sure as hell would have rather have played the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am still egregiously upset that either A, the Colts weren't able to get it done yesterday in order to propel the Bills to the 5 seed, and even more so upset that they weren't able, the Bills that is, to convert the 2-point conversion against Philadelphia that would have given them the 5 seed. I'm loving the confidence, and I wish I had as much as you did. Maybe I will by the end of the week. Got to let time go on here. But I don't want it to come across like I think that they have no chance. I've talked about this. They have Josh Allen. They have the run game, and you're hoping that can overcome what the defense of Jacksonville is. And then the other thing, too, that I think is huge here, it is the tight ends and how they're going to be able to utilize them. The Bills certainly have a chance, but I just don't want people looking at the Jags like there's some stepping stone here to the divisional round. I just don't view them as that. Richie, back in. What's the betting line on the Bills bubble screens? Over, under 5.5. Richie, give me the over. I'd love to see the betting line for a bubble screen per game. I think you'd have to set it realistically at 3.5. How many games this year did the Bills cash the over on that? More than half? Look, if they work, I don't care. The problem is they just don't ever seem to work. And I hate if there's one thing about Josh Allen's game that I absolutely, like, there's very little, if anything, about Josh Allen's game that I just blatantly dislike. The one thing that I genuinely cannot stand in his game is how he throws screen passes. I've talked about this on here before. I equate it to skipping a stone off of a lake. He throws it sidearm 100 miles an hour, and it never seems to be dead on accurate. It always seems to be thrown far too hard and fast for the distance in which it's needing to travel. And then just in general, even if the pass is completed or it is a good pass, it just, what the best result for them is like 7 yards. And it's not even like they're getting that consistently. God. I hate the bubble screen. More screens to James Cook, please. If we're going to run screens, let's get a little creative with it. Instead of Josh Allen snapping it and whipping the stone off the river to Khalil Shakir. Dakota, I was at the game last night. I was shocked. No Hawes jerseys in the stadium or the store. Well, we got to get on that. So if you want a Jackson Hawes jersey, you got to go and get on NFL Shop, I guess, and get a custom one. A Hawes jersey would be sweet. I'd love to rock that. You know who'd love to rock that, by the way, is Rico. You know who loves to rock a good jersey is Rico. We should get Rico a Jackson Hawes jersey. He would look good in it. He would. Shocked you didn't see one, though. I mean, I guess it's because you can't buy it, right? You'd have to go out of your way to get a custom one. But maybe you can be the first, Dakota. Get on that Jackson Hawes jersey train. Money, Mitch, the lead Robster. I think it's a shame that this can't be the AFC Championship game. I think the Bills could do it this year. We have a large sample size of positive playoff performances from these Bills. I hope they come to play. BF, the best on YouTube. This does fit, and this is why I said earlier, I think this is the barrier to entry. I think if the Bills beat Jacksonville, I think they're going to the Super Bowl. I won't predict the Bills to lose again if they beat Jacksonville. This feels like an AFC Championship game. I think that there's an argument that these are the two best in the AFC when they're playing their best. But then again, once it's just you can make this argument for Denver, you can make this argument for Houston. It's so wide open. But this is why it feels like an AFC Championship game, Mitch. It's because I feel like all these matchups do feel like they could be an AFC Championship. If the Bills were to have drawn New England, that would feel like an AFC Championship. If the Bills were to have drawn Houston, that would feel like an AFC Championship. The Bills drew Jacksonville, and it does feel like an AFC Championship. I'd argue every game up until the AFC Championship is going to feel like the AFC Championship for everybody here. You agree with that, Caroline? So I got my beautiful wife and my beautiful daughter over here. Zoe is having dinner. And they just came back from a big mall trip. Now, that was the first time Zoe has been in the stroller in a facility. We've taken her outside, of course. And how'd that go? Wow, I can't wait to hear about it. What do you think about? So, by the way, Caroline said, so what's the schedule this week? What did you think when I sent you that full football schedule this weekend?
That was a lot.
I sent her an itemized list starting Thursday with the college football playoff all the way to Monday to round out the wild card. What do you think about that? Sunday, 1:00, she's anxious for. Speaking for the people. Speaking for the people. Oh, my God, I'm anxious. I'm anxious. I need to get on Jeff King's level where there's just no anxiety. Mitch, appreciate you, brother. Richie, back in the building. My brother, you seem more uneasy now than when the Chiefs were in the mix. We got this. Cider and wings on me when you come to Buffalo to watch Super Bowl 60. Don't tease me with a good time, Richie. Look, it's not that maybe I am a bit more easy than when the Chiefs were in the mix. Why? Because this isn't the best version of Buffalo. When the Chiefs were in the mix, it felt like it was the best version of Buffalo. Last year with Josh Allen winning the MVP, that felt like one of the best versions of Buffalo. Back in the 13-second game, that felt like the best version of Buffalo. This doesn't feel like the best version of Buffalo. But then again, the Chiefs aren't in the mix, and all these teams don't feel like they're the best version of the NFL. They all do things well. They all do things poorly. I would argue that every single fan base right now is uneasy. I don't know how you couldn't be. What would give any fan base amongst all 14 in the playoffs any reason to be overly confident or the most confident they've ever been? The only team that I feel like should feel that right now going into the weekend is probably Rams fan. Because even if I'm a Texans fan who I do think is going to beat Pittsburgh, it's still Mike Tomlin and the Steelers at home on Monday night. Like, it's not easy. I think the only team that feels overly confident right now going into the weekend is the Rams. And I feel like that's justified. They are a 10.5-point road favorite. If that game were at SoFi, they'd be like a 14-point favorite. And it's justified. I know the Rams lost to the Panthers earlier in the year. That's the beauty of the NFL. But do I think they lose to them twice? Hell no. And I think it's more likely than not that they cover that spread than it is that they lose the game. Every other game, find me the fan base that's looking at their matchup saying, not a doubt in my mind. All of these games, if you go and just, the spreads of the game are a good indicator as to how the public views these games are going to go, how Vegas views these games are going to go. Every single line this upcoming week outside of that Rams game is considered to be within about 4 points. The two tightest games, Bears-Packers, Bills-Jags. Teddy's saying bulletin board material, every expert picked Jacksonville to win. Is that so? Where at? I'm going to look this up. Really? Every one of them? Is that on like NFL.com or something? I'm shocked by that. Like, I get picking Jacksonville, but every single one of them? I'm not able to find it right now, but I'll look throughout the week. I'm interested to see what the sentiment is. Jeff's doing some clarification for me. He's saying 6 of the 7 commentators picked Jacksonville today. You know who saw that besides me? Man. I get the love for Jacksonville. I mean, clearly I have respect for Jacksonville. I don't think that a clean sweep, though, for every single analyst to pick against Josh Allen, man, that shocks me. Zulu saying Trubisky looked better than Allen. Well, I think we'd all look pretty good against that Jets D. Hats off to Trubisky, though. Yeah, he balled out. Ray Davis balled out. That was great. Trubisky went nuts. It was like 22 of 29 with 4 touchdowns. It was amazing. But if you are an NFL quarterback playing against the Jets in Week 18 who are begging to lose that game so they can have a better draft pick, chances are you're gonna have an opportunity to go off. And Mitch Trubisky took advantage of that opportunity. If Josh Allen was playing in that game and say the 1 seed was on the line in that game and they had to win and Josh Allen had to play every snap, if they wanted to, Allen could have probably had 500 yards and 7 touchdowns. I would have loved to have seen a world where that game mattered a lot for Buffalo and Allen had to play as hard as he possibly could for 60 minutes. And I would have loved to have seen him do it in that red helmet. Ooh, baby. I wish they could find a way to wear the red helmets in the postseason. You can't. Can't wear alternate uniforms in the postseason. Let's talk about your 2025 rushing title winner. Let's talk about James Cook. James Cook is officially the 2025 rushing title winner, the first Buffalo Bill running back to win the rushing title since O.J. Simpson back in 1973. The best running back season a Bill has had since Thurman Thomas's MVP year back in the early 90s. An unbelievable year for James Cook in an unbelievable situation. It was less than a half a year ago that James Cook was holding out, demanding a new contract. And there was a large portion of the fan base, a large portion of analysts saying, I don't think that Buffalo should put a ton of money on the table here. Running backs are recyclable. It's not worth it to overpay for one. It's really not worth it to really even pay for one. You can cycle through. You can get value from younger guys. You can spend that money elsewhere. And you fast forward to today, and James Cook looks like he's underpaid. And each and every week, he proved to this fan base and to that organization that the contract that he inked this offseason was 1,000% deserved. James Cook had an unbelievable year, and I found that James Cook was as valuable to the Bills offense in 2025 as Josh Allen was. Because when James Cook had himself a day, the Buffalo Bills had themselves a day. When James Cook was balling, the Bills were winning. Josh Allen's the best in the world right now, in my opinion. But I think if you remove James Cook from that offense this past year, what does it look like? And I got to tell you, I have no desire to know. And in that alternate reality, I think it looks not good. The rushing title is unbelievable to me because I don't think anybody would have anticipated that. When you have the MVP at quarterback and one of the best to do it with Josh Allen, I don't think you are banking on the Bills, who, mind you, hadn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since LaShawn McCoy. I don't think you were banking on them winning games through the ground in a fashion in which would lead that running back to have the best stats in the league. I mean, just a couple of years ago, it would have felt like you would have given it a snowball's chance in hell that the Bills would end up having a running back winning the rushing title during Josh Allen's tenure. And now you have James Cook with 3 consecutive 1,000-yard years and back-to-back years where he has 12-plus touchdowns on the ground. He averaged the most yards per carry he averaged in his entire career and a sizable bump in attempts, which goes to show you how much more they put on his plate and how much more they relied upon on him in 2025. James Cook had 102 more rushing attempts in 2025 than he did the season prior. That is a huge uptick. It wasn't like they just gave him a couple more carries to justify the contract. They gave him 102 more carries than the season prior, and that was because they needed to do that. The Bills' offense needed James Cook to be as good as he was in order for them to have the season that they did. 102 more carries than the season prior is crazy, and that resulted in more than 600 additional yards than the season prior. I cannot believe Derrick Henry did not steal the rushing title from him on Sunday Night Football. He had north of 110 yards at half, and he needed 153 to win the rushing title, and he finished with 126. John Harbaugh has some questions to answer. Took the ball out of Derrick Henry's hands in the second half. He was on pace for over 200 rushing yards, and they took the ball away from him, and they lost the football game. But hey, Buffalo fans are singing the praises of John Harbaugh today. That led to James Cook solidifying the first rushing title for a Buffalo Bills running back in 50 years. Over that. Unbelievable. Tip of the cap to James Cook on an unbelievable, historic, as Caroline loves, season. Does not get much better. And all we can hope is that that translates into prolific postseason ball they're going to need it from James Cook if they want to go the distance. But shout out to James Cook. It was a rough offseason. He got what he deserved, and he proved that what he wound up getting was beyond fair. And we'll just put it like that. Money Mitch will round us out this evening saying James Cook did not deserve his contract. He deserves more. Hopefully he doesn't come back to the table this offseason. I don't think that's going to happen. But listen, James Cook, when you do get paid, people do fear that once you've gotten paid, you do fall off a bit because you've taken care of business financially. The main goal at your job is to get paid. This is these guys' jobs. They want to get paid. James Cook wanted to get paid. And sometimes you fear that once you get the bag, you take your foot off the gas. But James Cook did the complete opposite. He put a lead foot down on the gas pedal, and it was 120 miles an hour all year long. An incredible season. An incredible episode of the Smoke Break in the books on a Monday night here, an hour and a half spent with you talking about the wild card round, in which we will be talking about with you all week long. I cannot wait. It's going to be one hell of a week, and it's going to be one hell of a game. I can assure you that. And I'm hoping to God the Buffalo Bills are on the right end of things. This one's in the books. Rico with you tomorrow on the Rico Report. Wednesday, Thigh Doc will give you a much-needed injury update. We got word Max Hairston will not be available as we thought for this wild card game after suffering the injury against the Jets. He will not be good to go. We'll get more information about that, the kicking situation, and all other injuries from Thigh Doc on Wednesday. Rico and I together with you for Rico and Bot on Friday, where we really dive into this matchup together. And then it's Sunday, where we get after it. Wild card round, Bills, Jags, 1 p.m. Eastern. But in the meantime, that is going to do it for the Smoke Break here on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. Enjoy the rest of your Monday night. Enjoy the rest of your week until I see you next. Much love, as always. And before I sign off, Zoe, who wants to let you know about our friends over at Sleeper. Zoe just reminded me about our friends over at Sleeper, and I'm glad she did, because they are going to have you set up for an even more awesome week of incredible football. Take advantage of the promo on your screen, a free $20 entry via the link in the description below. You click that, you sign up for Sleeper, and once you sign up for your account, you will immediately get a free $20 entry to use with your Sleeper picks. You can use those during the wild card round, of course. You can use that on the NBA, NHL, you name it. It's all on Sleeper. And once you use your free $20 entry, use the promo code on your screen, BF25, and you will get a 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper terms of use for details. Currently available in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper via the link in the description below. All right, can't wait to see you later in the week. Much love again, as always, and go Bills.